Have you ever stopped to think about what it would actually take to redesign a country's government? I don't just mean a new leader, I mean changing the entire system from the ground up. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. Kenya's incredibly ambitious move to a devolved government. We're going to look at the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of how they pulled it off.
I mean, seriously, think about that question. It's huge, right? It's one thing to talk about it as a concept, but Kenya went ahead and did it. They started this massive journey to take power that was locked up in the central government and spread it out across the entire country. And how they actually did it? Well, that's the fascinating part. At its heart, the idea is actually pretty straightforward. Think of it like this. The national government is the corporate HQ, and the new county governments are all the local branch stores. Devolution was basically the CEO saying, okay, branch managers, you now have real authority, you have your own budgets, and you are responsible for serving your local customers, the citizens, directly. All right, to really get a handle on this transformation, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the core idea, then look at the actual laws that made it real. We'll meet the team in charge of the change, understand the rules they had to play by, and finally, look at the timeline for making it all happen. So, first things first, let's get right to the heart of it. What was the whole point of this massive nationwide project? The whole point was this: decentralization. For years and years, all the power, all the resources, they were concentrated in the capital. The 2010 Constitution set out to completely change that by creating 47 brand new county governments. The idea was to make sure that decisions and the money to make things happen were closer to the very people they would affect. This wasn't just about shuffling papers. It was about the hope for better roads, local health clinics you could actually get to, and schools that answered to the community, not some far-off office. Okay, but an idea that big needs a whole lot more than just good intentions. It needs a rock-solid legal foundation. So how did Kenya turn this grand vision into laws you could actually enforce? Take a look at this. This is literally a page from the source material. The new constitution didn't just say, go devolve power. Nope, it handed Parliament a to-do list. It laid out a whole set of new laws that absolutely had to be passed, with deadlines, to build the legal machinery for this to even work. And we're not talking about small stuff here. These new laws had to cover the whole shebang, defining the precise powers of governors, figuring out how to manage growing cities, setting up rules so citizens could actually have a say in their local government, and even writing laws to make sure there was gender balance in the new county leadership. Now, here's a detail that I think is just brilliant. See that little note from the original document? Not yet enacted? This one little phrase shows you that a process this huge is never, ever a perfectly straight line. Even with constitutional deadlines breathing down your neck, the real-world job of writing and passing laws can get messy and face delays. Okay, so you've got the vision, and you've got the laws on the books, but who is actually in charge of managing this colossal day-to-day project? Well, that's where the Transition Authority comes in. And this wasn't just some informal committee. The Transition Authority was a legally created body with a crystal clear and incredibly difficult mission to facilitate and coordinate the entire transition. You can think of them as the project managers for redesigning an entire nation. Their job kind of split into two big parts. The first part, oversight. They had to be the official watchdogs. That meant reporting on progress, digging through the finances of the old local authorities to see what assets and debts the new counties were about to inherit, and basically keeping score on how these brand new governments were doing. But they weren't just there to check boxes and file reports. The other side of their job was all about capacity building, actively helping. This meant teaching the public what this new system was all about, training the new county officials, many of whom had never held public office, and even helping them drop their very first budgets. They were basically teaching people how to run a government from scratch. Now, you can't give a group that much power without some serious rules. So the authorities' work was held in check by a strict set of guiding principles. These were the official rules of engagement for the whole transition. And these weren't just nice suggestions, they were non-negotiable. The authority had to be accountable to the people, not to politicians. Everything they did had to be transparent and fair. They had to make sure the new governments were set up to be competent, and, maybe most importantly, they had to stay completely nonpartisan. Their job was to build the house, not to pick sides in the arguments happening inside it. So, with the laws set and the project managers in place, how long was all of this supposed to take? Well, the plan was laid out in a really clear, two-phased timeline.
This diagram, pulled straight from the source document, lays it out beautifully. The whole transition wasn't going to happen overnight in some big bang. It was carefully broken into two distinct phases, with a massive national event serving as the dividing line right in the middle.
So here's the breakdown. Phase 1 kicked off in March 2012. You can think of this as the prep stage, getting all the laws and structures ready to go. Then came the pivot point, the first general election under the new constitution. That election marked the end of Phase 1 and started the clock on Phase 2. And Phase 2 was a 3-year window for all those newly elected county governments to get up and running and for the entire transition to be finalized.
So, the legal blueprint was there, the transition team was ready to go, and the timeline was set. A nation had essentially been redesigned on paper. But with the clock ticking and new leaders taking their seats, the next challenge was just immense. How do you turn that blueprint into a functioning reality for millions of people? Because that's when the real story begins.